Well, welcome to the Dream Labs. Dr. Contrast Live here. I hope everyone is well. And just before I begin here, I just want to take a moment here and recognize a very special guest or individual who just chose to follow me. A good friend over the years and extremely talented young lady. And I just want to hope that she's out there listening today. If not, please, Bets, my sincerest thank yous to you for joining and following this program, and always good to have you on board. And I so appreciated your text message the other evening I received. Very kind of you to do so. So I just want to recognize you and thank you so much for all your commitment and followership over the years. And I wish you and Sam all the very best. So thanks for joining forces with her today, and I hope you enjoy this program. I'm going to go back a little bit, folks, to where we were on last Friday, rather. I just had to make up some time here. We started looking at some G12 refinement material. And we spent a lot of time, for example, over the last few weeks and few streams going through some very interesting things, for example, in the exterior of these beauties in this whole program. And the purpose of this whole program, the G12 is primarily going to be a high-speed intergalactic GT racer. So we're looking at different sets of packaging rules here, different systems of operation, approach, entry, egress, power systems, suspension, the whole 9 yards, and taking a look at a very good vital process and a really substantial product to work with when we're all said and done. So I started just to do some real three-quarter studies here last Friday, just to kind of get loose, because we've done a lot of front three-quarter work, refining some things, and I have a good handle on that, but I thought the rear three-quarter still needed a lot of work. So I'm looking at things, for example, as an overhead three-quarter, very round, very elegant tail section on this to counterbalance a very abrupt, very low profile wheels to the corner front end graphic on this thing. Also, we're looking at a rear section too in terms of maybe breaking up the surfaces with a real strong slump line that comes across, instead of being parallel to ground, slump it down into the system itself and then come back with a nice little interface to get the power cells in between and some intakes and so forth. And then really, unlike this one, this guy wraps around a little bit and kind of closes off the tail section a little bit more. So that was sketch number one that we worked with. So let me just get this out of the way. The second one we looked at was coming into a little bit more of an overhead, a little bit overhead three-quarter, where we actually kept that same really elegant round flare to it, but maybe broke up the intake and so forth and brought some nacelle or some razor lines back to the rear three-quarter. And at the same time, just keeping a very low profile. Notice how very blunt that front end is. And again, another basic theme, going back, looking at a very dead elevation rear three-quarter shot of this guy. And, you know, it was okay, but it just, to me, it still looked very automotive. It just didn't look like it belied a galactic GT racer, so to speak. So, but I am pleased with the overall format here of the round tail section. It's getting the details underneath here to really make it sing and be compatible with the overall package we're dealing with here. So I went through that series. Then the third study was going back in and really kind of moving it around a little bit and saying, all right, let's just kind of slow it down a little bit. And I think this one started to have some personality to it. I'm not quite sure it's confined yet or else complete unto itself, but the stance is there. I think, you know, the overall gesture, look how low profile this thing is. And that upper comes right straight through, and then the center, again, we have that little bit of a slump line, making that swallow's tail back on the rear three-quarter end of it coming back into play. But I think the business end of it now is starting to look a lot more amenable. For example, the draft line coming through for downforce with air coming through this canard into the exhaust system. And there's a little bit of a breather in here, so some airspace, so let that air to kind of fly through and become more substantial. So once that was set up, we went with that route, and that's pretty good overall character. For example, it started to have a lot more substance as opposed to being, let me go back to this for a moment here and compare one to the other. That had to have more of a surface to it. For example, look at that variation. If you look at this, very automotive, still very contemporary, looking almost like it's today. This steps out a bit further and gets a little spookier, especially when you start to put some nomenclature like color graphics and identification into it. It will be a whole lot stronger. So I think we have some really good legwork there and ahead of the game plan with this rear three-quarter. It's not there yet, but I still think the refinement is necessary, and we're going to go a little further with it here maybe today. So then we look at this. There was a good setup here, for example, of how that began to work from the rear three-quarter. Very low profile sketch rendering piece. Then I thought, you know, let's go back to the front end graphics and see how compatible they are. Let's go back to this. So I cranked this one out just the other day. There is its mate, for example. Let me kind of get these guys in place here. There is a rear three-quarter in compatibility with a front three-quarter. And then you can see some of the interface. For example, this looks very, very lethal, very, very stealth-like, extremely fluid, low profile, a real ground hugger, and very simple. For example, this cantilever glass and the closed wheels, and getting more of the IMSA lamping system. It might not exist in the final GT process, but I just want to take a look at some facial graphics on this thing to see what it might look like. So let's get this one out of the way for a moment here and just talk about this for a moment. Much more tailored. I mean, this recorder front really looks like it's got some business to it. For example, really happy with the canard. We opened this up on a Nemo. One of the observers on the Twitch program here, we had a very needle nose in this thing, and it just didn't look right. We were trying to come back to with the Origins final GT series they did on the G12. We opened it up a little bit more. We closed the wheels off, put some canards out here, suspension riggers to kind of hold the program together in the body form. Still maintain the same body side, same intake, for example, and then these breathing gills, we call that the Nemo process, where they close at speed, open up during braking, and so forth. All these little pieces begin to help put together the architecture of what we're after. Then again, the rear quarter, for example, the intake into the engine system, which is hydrogen-based, which is going to be really interesting too. Then I just put together, for example, some things on the G12 identification. By the way, those of you out there, if you're listening, when you tune in, for example, let me know if you can think of a good name. We're going to start putting together some names together for this thing to kind of give it a real good contract piece here. So there's the front 3/4 graphic, for example, that I think is much more compatible with what we have here in terms of the interior, the exterior, the rear 3/4. So there they are. There they are side by side. I think there's some really interesting synergy happening between one to the other. Moves over a little bit, so you kind of get to see where the relationship is here. There's one to the other, and I think it's got some real character now. So based on that information, I'm going to go ahead here and lay out a couple of really rough sketches here to work with. This is, again, refinement time. Here's a rear 3/4 shot of that last series we did from Friday. I went back in and trying to put a little bit more guts and animalistic form to it here. And I'm going to go through just a real quick sketch rendering here about what these surfaces might look like. So let's get rid of some of the obvious things here first. Let's drop down a shadow. And let me do that first. I want to get a, no, we'll just work with this as is. I'm going to come back and add a little bit of shadow to this thing. So we'll kind of tone this down a little bit, put a little bit of this high graphic into it. Get that down. A little bit of shadow work. Just to kind of ground it a little bit. There we are there. Come back in through here where the rear section is. Catch a little bit of shadow up those exhaust nacelles. Come back forward to get the shadow to work in here. And again, just enough to ground this guy. And the purpose of the stream today is to really look at maybe refining some things we've got from a rear 3/4. Once you get that shadow down in there, interesting thing to look at. Let's kind of put these nacelles in place too, so we can kind of come back and tone them a little bit later. So there's exhaust A and B. I just want to rough those in and get that started. So there's a start at looking at the business end of the rear 3/4. It's a little bit busier, but I think it takes it away from that slump line. It gets a little bit more aggressive in terms of shape and surfaces here. So let's kind of put a little bit of surface in this guy now. Let's come back in and really start to illustrate this thing. A little sketch rendering together. Come back in. A little bit of just I'm going to do a pencil rough first, just to get a nice idea of graphics and breakup here. Let's kind of see what this does. Let's get a little bit of time here, just laying in some of the hard surfaces. Good pencil sketch first, just to kind of see if the block surfaces are working well, or the rhythm is there, and getting something started here with just a nice content about where we are. Let's kind of soften this off. Let's kind of come around this highlight line here. Let's kind of do this. Let's get that body side in place. Just kind of rough that in. Just really quick passes first. I come back in again underneath here along that bone line, and this little intake area here. A little bit of shadow on that guy. Run that down. Get that all in place. Run that together again. Get that bone line through here. Back into the upper again. Separate with the glasses, which is right in through here. Let's lay that in graphically. A little bit of glass. That drops off, and notice that thing fades very quickly into this front canard we've got up front here. So let's just kind of wax this thing in here. Real loose, quick pencil sketch. Verifying surfaces here. That's all we're doing. Back a little more tone into this thing. A little more body surface to separate that away from one from the other. Bring that up the hill here. Bring that into play. Bring that little line across the top of the upper rear quarter area. Bring that into play here. Separate this a touch more. A little shadow drop in this. Open that wishbone. Again, bring this surface forward. This tells where that shadow or that light source is coming from. Let's bring that into play. A little more harder bone line underneath here. Notice I'm using the side of the pencil to just tone this thing in very quickly and rapidly to get an idea of where these shapes are going to go. I'm going to come back in through here, underneath this thing. A little bit of high contrast in through here. I'm going to break that up a little bit. And this little suspension spar around the edge here. Again, take the light source into play here and come right back in and just walk that surface in. Just a nice little change of pace around the edge. Have some line weight change in here. Some venting into the engine bay. Same thing across the street here. We'll kind of bring this into play. A little bit of hard line in here, kind of separate that where those gills are. Now we're starting to get some character in this thing. We're beginning to look like a form that we're after here. So let's kind of drop this piece in. And a high contrast into this thing. The wheel pant on the other side, which is almost hidden by the axle. Now let's get these extractors in place. Let's kind of put this into place here. Drop a shadow off of this. Drop a shadow off of this. Let that just come back out here. A bit of shadow on this guy. And put a little bit up on top here. And some breathing lines here as that air comes through underneath that surface and it kind of drives on behind the wheel and take it all in. Let's bring that through. Yeah, a little more color into this thing. A little more tone in behind here so we kind of really get the offset here. Really tone that in. Bring it back. Again underneath. Bring this back into play. Again, let's bury this thing. Again, a little more depth in here. Walk it out of that shadow. Really reinforce what that thing is doing. A little stronger in the glass on here, a little softer up on top, where it's much more reflective. Soften that portion off. Deepen this as it turns the corner. There's my glass canopy. A little bit of that razor, and let's turn that into a line form here. All of a sudden, we're going to get some really good understanding of where these surfaces are falling here. There may be a little bit of air break up on top, a little bit of a change of pace here. Let's kind of put an air break up on top of this guy. Let's do this. And again, a bit of a breather line down below here. Just a little bit of color added, air brake, add speed. We're coming in, for example, to launch this thing, there's a little bit of a palette on top here. Maybe some of these guys have got a little bit of color designation to it, and those cylinders are a little bit of a change of pace to it as well. Just enough character here to, that's where the power source is. A little bit of warm and cool action going together here. Notice there's a little bit of a return here. The semicircle comes back into play. Maybe that drops into shadow, comes right across this form as well, and begins to drop a shadow over the top of those cylinders like so. So that's doing that. Come back in here. Notice this little reverse, this little pop-off valve restores here things. Comes back into that. Maybe there's a little bit of this going on too. Just that to take place. That. Again, a little more reinforcement here. Along that edge. And a little bit of, just a little bit of dusting across that upper piece right here. So there we are. That's a start, for example. Just get some of the surface work in here to get this guy to kind of just come together and see what kind of surfaces we're dealing with here. So let's do this. I'm going to sharpen this up a little bit. Let's finish this off just a little bit more here. Put this all together. Bring all of this. A little stronger here with this step pattern. And again, a little bit of shadow underneath this guy. Middle of the exhaust area. Get that right across the base and run it through. Put a shadow underneath this guy as well. I'm going to force that little, pardon me for turning this upside down just to kind of get more rhythm and more rhythm in the line. A little bit of change of pace here. And again, that starts to come together pretty nicely as far as what we're after. This is a very simple, elegant form here. Let's kind of bury this just a bit here. Let's kind of get rid of some of this. Let's put that into place. Let's get these gills to work a little bit. And reverse that out, reverse that out, reverse that out. Those gills. Then this little canard underneath here, very interesting. That's going to have some real high contrast, dark, coming out the light. This little canard really does, that's an interesting little aspect of this form. What happens is the air comes through this air dam up front here, which is now, that's going to go to darker black here. Like that. That's an actual platform or a canard, downforce canard up front. An air deflector. Got a little bit of this character to it as well, where we come around with those little wings that come across. There it is. Now, that happens in here, that air comes flying through, right on through the machine. It kind of grounds the whole thing here. So let's put some line weight into this guy too. So we're ready to fly here. A little line weight change. Into this air flap, brake flap. There it is up on top. Let's get a little more shadow in this. This is going to go much deeper here. We're going to get a lot of high contrast in that shadow area as that tail section drops off. Same thing through here. Into that. A bit of reverse, a little bit of shadow out of that area there. A little bit of shadow out of this as well, depending where that light source is coming from. Just a little bit, just tuning in. Again, the purpose today is to really analyze this thing from a surface definition and character, what we're after in terms of the rear 3/4 of this beauty. Let's kind of clean this up. It's just a little bit sloppy here. Pardon me. So just kind of get this in. Drop that open. A line weight change here. A little line weight change here. This opens up. That's a bit of a brake flap. Rear 3/4. Let's get this line in place as well. Roll this over. Out. A little more shadow into this thing. So it separates itself as an actual canard. An under tray. And that comes out. And helps to direct air through the entire machine here. Let's open this up a little bit more. Again, a little bit of shadow in this guy. And again, reversing that shadow, it's going to catch that across. Just a little bit of that shelf. Really solid, good, hopefully quick pencil sketch here. It gives us an idea of what those surfaces are doing. Up over the top, and that. And again, pretty quick, but nonetheless, it's got some character to it. I mean, there's a lot of busyness in here. Now, is that what we're after? I'm not really sure yet. It does have some personality, but is it what we're after? And last but not least, maybe just a little bit of an indication of light. Take it around the corner, and a little warning device, pop-off area here, and up front for the change of tires. So there's study number one. I don't know how you feel about it, but it's got some pretty interesting rhythm to it. A lot of character change for sure. from where we were, but nonetheless, let's see if we can keep pushing together here to get some sort of content out of this thing that really begins to make a difference in putting the whole process together. So this is sketch number one. Let me just do this for a moment, and I'm going to come back in with this background area maybe later on and begin to finish out the sketch here. I don't want to do too much to take advantage of time here. So there's phase number one. Again, looking at this, the whole idea of today's stream is to really analyze a little bit interior and exterior work, to refine it a little bit, and take a look at what we might have in terms of overall character for the machine. So there's phase one. Now we also went back in and did a second study where we actually came in and said, oh, you know what about if we just maybe change the rhythm just a little bit. So let's do the same process again. Let's get a bit of shadows down here, change a bit of the character, and I get the shadow in place. And see what this starts to do. Open that up just a little bit more. Another bit of refinement. Let's tone that in. Round this machine just a bit with the shadow. Come up front. There we are. Get a little bit of this coming into play here. Shadow. In the shadow. So that's basically, that helps to plant that car. Let's just bring this vehicle right down the ground line here, get the thing planted so we're in pretty good shape here. So let's go back and do the same thing again. Let's kind of soften some of these surfaces. Let's take it right on through now. Let's get the canopy lined up. It's just some real soft overall washes here. Notice I'm using the side of the pencil here to kind of just paint in some of these surfaces. Just really very quickly, very fluid, same light source. Coming back in, just rotating just a little bit here. And again, taking the same direction of light, I'm going to walk into this form very quickly, just to pass it all through, and then let it fade just enough here. Now let's come back in, make a little bit more contrast here. Notice again, really bad habit of working with the side of the pencil. It's just a neat tool to work with here, as you get a lot of thrust in it. Let's kind of go, just change the weight just a bit here to get the glass roughed in. Darken that down. And kind of start a little bit more contrast in this thing. Again, back into this area. Let's take that right through now. Into that shoulder. Over the top. A little lighter up on top, and just kind of get that reflection to work a little bit more for us here. A little softer. Highlight through. Let's get these negatives in place. There's darks against light really begins to help define what we're after as far as pattern goes. That's a little bit of an insert here. So there we go. There. Same thing on this side. Again, I really enjoy, for example, before I go into any really final prototype rendering work, I would like to try to prove out a few things here in pencil first to see what it looks like as far as character goes. And also, it really helps to determine how to begin to really finalize the color system here, because you're setting up a value pattern as well as you go. A little bit of a break line here. I'll just tone this in. Let's bring that highlight right around here. Get this working. Now let's really punch in where this insert is, the intake. Let's kind of drop that shelf over and drop it right back in down that catwalk. Again, a little more toning through this, where that shadow is really going to highlight that separation from the body side to the upper platform, catwalk to body side. A little bolder, and then let it fade into light. Get that highlight line to come right across here, right up into the area, and then just lose it. Let's get a secondary line in through here where the fillet might be, and just let it lose. Let's kind of blend that out a little better. Come back in through here, pick this guy up, and separate this just a bit more. Subtle changes, but hopefully really beneficial. Let's put this into play here. Line weight change. Just going to get this graphic here and just take it right into that shadow, that platform up on top. Let's do a little bit of this and change a little bit of character in through here. Give this some expansion joint material right there. A little bit more ribbing like the other one has here. Let's go back in again. A little more contrast. Let me switch gears here with a pencil. Get this negative again, this drop off. Got to read. Again, to center line of vehicle. Into that core area here. Notice again, side of pencil. It's just a really great trick. You cover a lot of ground. It's almost like painting. And that's exactly what's happening here. You actually paint the surfaces as you go. Let's put a shadow in this. Let's get that negative area and to really highlight itself. There you go. Let's push that the other way. Pardon me. Get that in there. Now let's get these negatives, these gills. Again, air transfers dropping into the actual back of the bucket of the actual form itself in the rear quarter area here. And there we are. That's starting to put together a nice little pattern here. So here we go. Let's go. Let's just open this thing right up. Let's close this thing right down. Pardon me. So now again, it's a little bit of an air sneak here. We kind of pattern that through. Again, the idea here is to get this whole thing to kind of just, let's kind of lay this in here surface wise. Let's get this this little sidewall to kind of reinforce. And that little bit of a step there. And then again, across that nacelle. That little insert, this again is an air duct that drives air right through the machine. And helps to ground it at speed. Let's kind of get this in place. Let's do this first. A little bit of a base in here first. And set the pattern up. While I'm at it, let's get those hydrogen cells in place here. Just really kind of side of pencil those guys in. So the same process here. Let's really kind of dust them in a little bit. Same thing up on top here where this air brake is. A little bit of a tempo change. There we go. It's starting to come together here for us here, gang. Let me get a little sharper stick here. We'll be good to go. I'm going to reinforce these line weights a little bit. A little bit more shadow down this catwalk here. Separate those forms out a little bit more. Again, just to dust off the top of this guy so we know where we are. There it is there. Let's get this guy operating here. And reverse this, pardon me. I just turn this aside just a bit here. Get this to disappear in the shadow here. Hold it just a bit. And there we are, starting to come together here, folks. There we are, got that down. Now let's get this, let's get this bone line in place here. And again, let's get that little bit of reverse right there. Really helpful. Same thing across the tail section. And up into here, just a little bit more pattern of where the light source is coming from. Bring this on through. A little deeper in through here, since it's in a bit of a trench. We'll separate that out just a bit more. Take that in the body side. And again, just get that line to kind of crispen itself up and run it through. Let's get these guys in place here. Let's get this under tray, which is right here. Part of the development. Let's get that in place here first. There's that front canard. That's that, which picks up the same piece here. That means I just kind of back up here just for a moment. Get this lined up. There's that canard. Let's get these guys in place on these gills. The Nemo Special. And sharpen this up a little bit here. Let's get back to this glass line just for a second. Let's kind of strengthen this a little bit more. A lot of high contrast in that one separation from one to the other. There's a highlight right there. There we are. Let's start to put some nice surface together in this guy. Just kind of cleaning it up a little bit more. It's not as busy, for example, as this one is, and I'm not complaining one against the other. I just think that there's two variations working here. One extremely, let's see if I can sneak that up just a bit more. There we go. One extremely busy in terms of the rear 3/4. Do we want to go that route, or do we want to really nice and simple? A lot of intake area, a lot of breathable, movable fins and gills and so forth to get this job to work here. Let's do this. Let's bring it back in and continue on here. Let's get this shadow to work here. Let's kind of just flatter in here. Let's get these guys to run now. Exhaust nacelles. Let's bring them into play. Away at the shadow again. That drops off. A little bit of a hexagonal kind of theme to it. And a little bit of shadow or bridging through here, and there's a bridge that takes its natural course. There's an insert area here. This goes right on through. As that goes through, again, notice a little bit of shadow here. A little canard on that piece. A little woolen splitter on that piece. Into highlight, into shadow again. Just kind of get this guy to define itself here. Real fast, quick pencil sketches to really help me see where the patterns are going to emerge. So what I want to do with this thing, when I finally go to color and get these guys lined up, let's put a little more tone in here just for a second. Let's bring this into play. Shadow. And reflect them just a little bit. And for what it's worth, I'm line weighting this guy now. Well, center line of wheel. No return. A little bit hotter on this return. Let's put more tone in this thing since it's away from the light source. Just a little bit more tone to kind of give it more definition. No, it's really a lot of fun to work with a Prismacolor pencil. The reason that wax base is so strong is it gets into a situation where it's really interesting how the side of the pencil, I always like to use these guys almost like a paintbrush. It just has that same kind of character to it. While we're at it here, let's put a little breaking identity here. Take that right around the radius. That becomes another aspect of this guy. Going right through the shape itself. So there we are. That's a pretty decent start here about where this form is going to look like here. And I'll just kind of do a little more definition up on front here. Pardon me. Over to this. And we'll get those same canards we showed in the front end graphic out front here. And just a little bit more tone in this thing here. Let's kind of get some line definition. That's where we are here. That comes up, in, and right back through. Some line distinction, surface. Yeah, surface. A little bolder with some of the shadows back in through here. Maybe a little bit of this as well. Just to kind of separate the shapes. That's a pretty interesting format here. And I'm not, hey, how you doing, Starship? Good to see you, Doc. Good to see you. Sorry, only chiming in briefly to say that it looks awesome. I have not much time right now. My dog needs, hey, no problem. Good to have you on board there, Nemo. No problem. Here's the first study we did here. I'm just looking at some of the refinement stuff here. Let me take it real quickly through the whole process. You saw some of the other, here's a front 3/4 piece we did just to kind of give it a bit of a warm up here. After going through some of the exploratory stuff we did, for example, like this group we did on Friday of last week, Nemo, we did this little thing right here. We just did that rear 3/4. Yeah, it's kind of friendly. It looked still a little bit automotive, had a bit of a slump line in it and so forth, but it's getting close to a business package. So after I did that one, I went back in, for example, late in the day and cranked out a front 3/4 of this thing with a little more graphics to it to get some of that character down, for example. And looking at maybe a front end graphic with some GT lighting and so forth, not quite there yet, but I think it gave a little bit more. That inspired me to go back in and say, we need to do a little bit more refinement in the rear 3/4 stuff. So I went from that sketch that we did late last week into the first pass here, looking at overhead 3/4, again, a little more melodic in some of the surface work in the back. It might be a bit busy here, but it just starts to take on a different personality back here especially. Just interesting how it all comes together. Yeah, you like the front 3/4, the way that's coming through? Is that what you're referring to? Yeah, I really appreciate too, Nemo, the forwarding of the BMW series piece. That was really interesting how that whole thing came together. The nose is perfect. Yeah, I think it's just a lot of fun. That came back nicely with that. Thanks to your input, that got back to the shark nose original G12 origin piece. We didn't lose a lot of density in there, but I think some of the stuff is getting a little sneakier now. So we're coming together pretty nicely here. So again, let's move on here. That's the first pass. It's just, again, the purpose of today's stream, Nemo, was to just look at maybe some overhead 3/4 stuff we have not looked at before. A little more business-like back here, a little busier. Air flap and so forth, getting rid of that big flat piece that you liked. This is more of a canard now, for example, in this area. Today it was pretty thin, the other sketch, but this is an extension of the front canard, or the downforce piece on the front end of the machine. It just comes right on through and into these breathers, and into the exhaust system itself. So that's one look at it. And I just started to wrap up the second piece, which was this guy right here. Same set of circumstances, but again, a little simpler back and through here. I'm not quite happy with this look yet. A little bit flat, but maybe we need some interest in this area. But I think there's some neat things going on in being a little more intake oriented. Again, obviously with an intake in through here. So we've got a lot of breath going into this thing. Should be pretty interesting to deal with here. So I'm going to move along here. These are, again, just real quick and dirty sketches. I'll put a little bit of background on these things a little bit later on. And as I said at the beginning of the program today, I really wanted to concentrate on doing some really good pencil sketches first to get an idea of the patterns, what we're going to look like and what we want to work with. And then come back in and do some really nice finished color pieces, maybe on tone paper or some really good composition illustration work or some final study work here. So let's do this. Find this guy, get it out of the way. So there's phase number 2, but last but not least, if the exhausts are just a bit shorter, it would work. Yeah, you know, that's exactly right. In both cases, I think what I'll do now, one of the sketches I want to look at, I've got a couple of pencil refinements where I really pulled them in a little bit. In fact, I'll show you where we are here. Since you've got limited time here, Nemo. I took these guys and really pulled them back in quite a bit. I mean, there's a big difference in the overall extension of those exhausts. They even can go back even further. So even putting these together, I spent some time this morning going back and refining the sketches and get it more refined with this thing. So you're absolutely right. That's the same thought for me as well. Shorten the exhaust pieces that we're in. So those are the two settings we start with here. But I think last but not least, I want to just spend a little bit of time here by doing the following. Let's go back in and let's say this is the interior. We finally have gotten, I think, some business-like look to this thing. And I want to go through again just a very simple pencil sketch on looking at some of the surface work here. Let's kind of get the floor established first. Let's start from the ground on up. There's baseline, etc. Come around the floor itself. Get this to work a little bit. Separate some of these shapes. Get that laid in first. We'll work on some of the details here. Again, just a real good quick pencil rough before we go to final color. I think the basic theme is there. And the floor, I'll darken that down a little bit later just so I get that started. Again, a little bit, some passes now into this form. Bridge. And a little bit of canopy here, a little bit of glass. That's where that's going to be at center line. Again, and through here, glass. Let's kind of finish this out a little bit. Dog type, hey, okay, that's awesome. Sorry, I really need to run. We're having a wet problem here. No problem, looking good. Come around the bend with this. Just laying in some graphics. And some switches. Very simple. Even pretty well confined. And some of these shapes will work a little bit better. Bit of warning device up on top here. This is all informational. Put some graphics up on top here. This is all part of the early warning system, perhaps up on top of this little ribbon here, or the bridge surface that we're dealing with here. So that's going to come through and pass on in. Come around the bend here with this strap. Just going to get this into place here. Turn this upside down. We'll get some real line thrust in this thing now. There we go. That started to come around the bend here. And we'll come back to it. Exterior. Here's upside down a little bit. With that little canard to work here. A little line weight change. A bit of that bridge. These switches to work a little bit there. A little bank of switches. A little canard area here for the pilot itself. Let's separate the tunnel console just a bit now. Just a nice little value study here on putting this cockpit together. Run it through a bit of a transparency. That goes right through. That goes right through. And controls. And controls again on the other side. Notice how we put this, let me stop there for a moment. Notice how we put this thing right on the contrast in terms of putting it right next to the pilot where his hands are. All the controls are right up here on this bank of switches here. Let's just kind of finish this out here just for a moment. Pardon me. Little digital screen here. Same thing on this side, a little bit more of the banking here. The front screen. Some information systems here. Some control work here. Hey, how you doing? Sorry there, folks. I was just trying to wrap out some quick sketches here of this exterior and interior. Hey, oh boy, I apologize. I'm late. No, not a problem at all. Just want to bring up the speed in a moment here, Bat, in a second. And again, thank you so much for joining us here. Glad you're on board. Not a problem at all. I'll just bring you back up to speed here in a moment. Just what we're looking at here, Brad, is a very I started the stream looking at the possibility when we landed Friday on some of those exterior pieces, for example, in the refinement parts of the, how long do we have left? Hope I didn't miss. Oh, no, we're in good shape. I'm going to run for about another maybe 15 minutes or so. So you're good. I'll bring you back up and review here in just a moment. But these are, I really want to concentrate on getting some interior refinement pieces done, doing some just really nice, quick and dirty pencil sketches of where we are first, and then coming back in and really going into it with some interesting things in terms of getting a little bit more detail, a little bit more information down. A good pencil rough first before I go to some final concept sketches here on the exterior and the interior. So here's my glass surface and the actual canopy. I'll show you that stuff in a moment here, Brad, when you get your hair. Let me just finish this little sketch off here. This is part of the interior. working with Prismacolor pencil. Brad, how about that? You got yours? You mentioned the other day you were really excited about getting those guys on board to work with. That's cool. Great stuff. You'll love them, I think. So here we go. A little more tone in this guy. Just to finish out the sketch itself. And we'll bring it up to speed here. A little bit of line weight change in this thing. Some more graphics in through here. Looking at just controls and switches. Things that the pilot's going to deal with when he's working with this G12 GTR machine. So we're in good shape. There it is there. Some real rough package here about am I in the right direction here to kind of get the information when we need when we begin to put together the whole process of the interior. Let's do this as a release. Again, some switches. And again, switches. And some information stuff here. Just enough of that. Red line. Red line. Information in through here. And again, just a little bit more tone in this guy. Let's get this 4 knocked out a little bit deeper here. There's 4 surface. Pardon my hands here. More depth under here. A little bit of tint back in through here. Up on top. This is exterior. I'm not going to be worried about that too much. That's that little canard that's on the exterior of the vehicle itself. And these are little intake pieces here. Let's kind of scrap those in. And the compatibility is over here. A bit more of the exterior, just a touch of that in here. And relate one to the other. And again, let's put a highlight line along this fender peak here. Just kind of finish it out here for us. Got a little bit of fade here. Right back in the light source. A little more tone up front here when this thing begins to fade away. Pardon me as I turn it around again. Some line weight. And little by little, I think we're getting there. Let's kind of tone this back. This is this strap, this interior strap that runs around the entire cockpit. I'm going to beef that up just a bit more. Run that through. A bit of tone in the handle graphic. Get that highlight run to run. And a little bit more bone line right in through here. Side of the pencil, just take that right on through. Soft trim. There it is right there. Bring that into play. And then release it. Surface change here. Let's kind of get that little shadow to work for us. Shadow underneath here, a little deeper. Again, just a real powerful indigo blue value study on what this cockpit might look like when we put it all together here. So, Brad, by the way, I just want to say your contour lecture would really help me. Yeah, it's great. I could tell you had a lot of great questions there, Brad, and I'm really happy to hear that worked out well for you. There's a lot of subtlety information in there that we kind of work with here, kind of put it all together. But you did an excellent job of asking a lot of good questions, and I think it all paid off for you in the long run here. So I'm glad to hear that. I sure have mine, but I never dared to use. Now you've got them. Now you got to use them now. They're great. The Prismacolors, you'll love them. Hey, hi Bets, how are you? It's great to have you on board here. I just hope you heard the beginning of the program here. If you didn't hear it, I just want to repeat it here real briefly. Bets, I can't thank you enough for that very kind text I received the other day. I was just thinking about you as well, and it's nice to know that you're out there and you're happy and successful, and I hope you and Sam have a very long, happy life together, and I really appreciate you taking the time to be on board here. Thanks for joining forces with me here today. This is great. Just to bring up the speed here, Bets, and also Doc, let's see, Doc, let me answer this question here first. Join Dr. Hannes. Doc, what's the secret behind your amazing dexterity? It's not amazing at all, Brett. The amazing dexterity is the fact that a lot of practice. I mean, when you've been doing this for somebody, I won't tell you how many years I've been doing this, but you learn how to refine certain things, and you learn how to get better as a result of practice. That's exactly, just interesting how it all comes together here. Um, Practice, practice, practice. Dexterity is something you learn, and you're going to find this out when you work with Prismacolor pencil. I've said this before. I'm going to go back and review some things here for your benefit, Brett. It's learning how to work with that Prismacolor. To me, this is not a pencil. That's a paintbrush. It's almost like painting with a piece of lead. It's just amazing material to work with here. So let me carry on, and I'll kind of finish up some things here for everybody. And Bets, thank you so much. It's great to have you on board, and I hope you're really doing well. Let's kind of tune this in a little bit of softer pattern through here. Just notice I'm using the side of that pencil, Brett, to kind of just develop a nice. It's just a great tool. Same thing on this side, a soft pad inside the pencil, and all of a sudden it changes technique for you. With this pencil, you don't have to work at it. It works for you. That's what I love about it. It does the job for us here. So here's a little interior side here, folks. And I just want to tone this back a little bit more. Just kind of do a little bit through the glass. Let's get that far fender in place. Let's get that same gill system up on the quarter. I get that down. And again, that's a real quick and dirty process in terms of, all right, let's just kind of tune this in just a bit more. Then we'll go back and review some things for you guys that maybe missed some of this whole context here is, again, Bets, we're working on a program called the G12 GTR Intergalactic. It's almost like a space platform racing GT machine. So I'll bring it back up to speed in a moment here. Let me put these aside for a second, and we'll go back through, and I'll just use this as a pointer. Let's go back to last Friday's stream for Bets' benefit here. We're working on this. I did some exterior studies here, Bets, and let me get these organized here, and we'll go right down the line. Started to do some work last week on the exterior of this thing. Let's kind of lay this in. On this exterior, just some real quick tone paper studies on what this is doing. For example, it's a single seat racing platform. They're working with a firm in town called the IP Forge, and a really great individual who's on racing expertise, and we kind of partnered up on doing some neat stuff here. So this is part of the conceptual process. Tons of sketches. So let me, question here, pardon me. You're the best. Say, well, do you blend your color dark, or do you just use the same value in a certain shape? Yeah, I'll use the same. I'll basically use the same pencil. It just kind of goes through tone changes from light to dark, Brett. So I'll go back through that in just a moment. But yeah, to maintain the same value to a certain shape, I'll use that same pencil to kind of variation in theme and variation in tone here to get things done. So here's the first set of concept sketches here, Bets, that we did on the G12. Little overhead 3/4, looking at some rear graphics and so forth, and changing the paradigm a bit and getting a real dead elevation on this thing. Do we want to close the rear wheels off? Do we want to open that up? So there's a sketch one. That's how that went together. And again, moving into another pace here. Here is phase 2, looking at overhead in a really round, elegant form back here that we wanted to maintain. But again, looking at the rear section and pure elevation, we again want to close it off of those the hydrogen systems and the exhaust systems down low. We want to go that route. The third study was this one. Now looking at maybe all things put together, notice this one has a bit of a change to it where the actual form itself is there, but we actually slump that line and bring it back up and swallowtail it back to the normal. This gets a little closer to the business-like process we're after here. It's much more concealed. It's less automotive or present-day vehicle. It's hydrogen cell powered. The intake system and air ducting work still functions well, and there's an initials. So when I finished that, I thought, you know what, we've got something maybe to work with here. Awesome work on the interior study as well, Doc. The dashboard is cool, and the twin stick setup. Yeah, I think we're getting there, Nemo. Thank you, sir. I'll get back to that in a moment. So when I finished this guy up, I thought, you know, let's go back and look at the front end graphics here. There's a front 3/4 of this guy, and all of a sudden, that thing starts to take on some personality. We've got what I call the Captain Nemo nose graphic on this thing in the gill system. By the way, Starship Captain, you were an awesome input on this thing as well. I really appreciate your time and effort. So there's a G12 variation right here. Just put the graphics together. What does it look like from the rear 3/4? And once we got the front 3/4 back into play, I did this last week. Just a nice little elevation and the front 3/4 with a GT lamping system. The nose cone graphics, the canards, the downforce dihedral, and some of the intake pieces. And again, it's very elegant little slump line. That's all it takes. It's a very simple shape. So once I got all that squared away, I thought, you know what? Let me get myself out of the way here. Let's go back and do some more refinement work on this exterior. So the first one I did was this, Bats. I went back to this sketch. Did a real rough overhead 3/4 of this guy. It's just a little busier. But again, all concentrating on getting that interior refinement of the exterior to refine itself from the rear 3/4. Pretty brutal. Air flap up on top. I'll have, F-35 just comes up to kind of cool you down and slow you down a little bit. It gets a little busy back and through with intakes and so forth and some gill work. But the basic premise was to find a real secret to getting this really elegant form. Notice it drops off into the bone-lined glass, the hydrogen system and the brake system underneath there. That flap canard that comes off the front wheels, that's still there. But looking at the rear three-quarter, that was study number one. So I started there. Then I moved from that one. Let's kind of tone it back a little bit. Let's do this process with it right here. Let's kind of push this back. And again, same kind of a quarter hip, really kind of nice pronounced, but I simplified the whole tail section. If you notice, the cylinders are still there, lighting system. Nima made a great point. I think these sketches, and he hit it right in the head. I'm going back in, for example, to just really reduce maybe the overhang on some of the exhaust systems here. But I think the basic characters there of this car from a 3 3/4. And I think, pardon me for going back here just for a moment. I think we're getting a lot closer in personality with, if I can find it here, with what this guy is doing in reference to the rear 3/4. So we can kind of get them together here. There's something that's starting to synergize here with what's happening here as to what's taking place up here. It's not there yet, but it's getting a lot closer. We're getting a lot more sophisticated with this thing. And the battle plan is, when it's all said and done, we're going to start distributing some final artwork and the print form for purchase and sale, and maybe build a 3D model like a speed form of this thing. Brad, I love how the back window is yellow. Yeah, the rear window is interesting, Brad. That is not so much a rear. This is all camera related. That's more of an air brake. If you follow aircraft technology, that's an F-35 type air brake that rotates up when you're at speed to kind of slow you down a little bit. And once we could go the other way and hinge it, but that's a hinged area. This is where the glass canopy is up front here. So we're in pretty good shape there. So interesting. So that was the second study we did. Now the last thing we did was going back. Now we've got the outside working a little bit. Spent a lot of time yesterday and again this morning really tuning in on some really interesting. What does the interior look like? What do we do with this thing to get this floating tunnel, this all glass interface? And with these sidewalls, for example, you see through the vehicle itself. That's the sight line we're after here. So what's happening is now the interior is starting to get a little bit more refined. I think I love this view because it kind of opens the whole thing up a little bit, shows you how refined it is, but the control systems are there, all stick related. Through the control panels right next to the pilot's hand, so it's easier to work with. And then last but not least, getting a little of the seating system coming into play here. So you're going to wear this interior. That's the intent that we're after here. So that's what we were looking for in terms of really interesting stuff and putting it all together. So there's a lot of stuff here. And since that time, again this morning, we go back and I'll wrap it up with this. Went back and refined just a line drawing here of what again, getting a little bit slicker with this thing. Maybe we'll kind of pull these back a little bit more. But I think the overall shape is getting there. It's interesting how all of a sudden the evolution is coming right down the pike. This is where this is reversed. That started there, a little bit busier here. I'm going to come back in and maybe slow it down a little bit. I'm not quite happy with this area yet. And I'm not being discontented with it. I'm just saying we need to really take the time to refine this thing, because I think we've got a great product to work with here. And you're a great audience to work with. And I really appreciate the time spent and all of you joining forces here today. And Brad, any questions at all before we wrap it up here? I mean, I'm trying to bring everybody back up to speed. So what the whole stream was all about today, it was about doing a very simple exercise and making sure that we had both an exterior look, let me kind of get these together, an exterior rear 3/4 refinement to look at from the overhead, and also from, there's phase 1. That's the first one we did. There's 2. And then going from the outside and the inside. And I think we've got a good compatibility system here. And I guess, Nemo, what do you think? And I'll just throw it out to you guys in terms of, well, I got a couple of questions, but they're not quite related to this. Go ahead, fire away. Fire away, Brad. What are they? Now the rear part of the front fender looks much better with the small fillets in the. Yeah, I agree. I think it's cool. A nice job there, Nemo. Nice. Just, I think you're referring to this area here too. By bringing this wrap in, this becomes an extension of that front canard. So we've got a little more girth into this thing, so it kind of settles the machine down at speed. And the gill system is excellent, so we kind of toned that back a bit. Big help. Alrighty, so thanks very much. And again, Brad, questions here at all? There's the, hi Brad, do I practice my curved long lines? How do I practice them? Very good point of reference here. I think one of the exercises I would suggest you look at is doing the following. Let's do this. I've got a blank sheet here. Curved lines, I come back in and go real loose with it. then come back in and just strike them. And then again, strike them. Nice and loose, then pick a target and then tighten them down. There it is. Again, same set of circumstances. Then tighten them down. Any curved sweep, thick and thin. Take it from thick into thin. Same thing, thick into thin. Why? Closest to me, further away. Thicker, thinner. Closest to me, further away. Closest to me, thick to thin, thick to thin. Again, thick to thin as it moves away. Does that help at all? See it, strike it. You got it. Iteration is the key. Great to see the progression of your work. Yeah, I thank you very much, Bats. It's marvelous to have you on board. I'm just delighted for you. So let's kind of put that into practice. Or find a blank sheet of paper. When you're doing a curvilinear form, for example, let's just do this. Let's just kind of put something together here for you. Yeah, I'm really working that shape down there. Let me move that. I'm sorry about that. Long stroke. Gotcha, Doc. So notice, now that I've got the strike line here, notice I'm going to let that go. This is now closest to me, Brett. I'm going to thicken this line up, build it, pick it up, and then release it. Again, into this body side. Pick it up, and then release it. Thick to thin. That gives you a lot of line weight character and takes the curves off of just having all the lines be the same. Now, side of pencil. This is what I'm referring to as far as working with a paintbrush. Yeah, not to get, well, you can get it hairy lines. It's still work. That's all part of the thinking process. So let's do this. If I come back in and use that side of pencil, look how I can use that as a paintbrush. And instantly render a surface. This is not a great example, but nonetheless, hopefully it'll help your case here. Again, back to the paintbrush, side of pencil. Weight change. And more thrust. Little mistake, make it work. How cool is that? See a little mistake back there? Fun stuff. There you go. Comes in here, rolls through. There you go. That's a good example of how to work with some line work here. Hope that helps. That makes sense. Thanks very much, Pat, for reminding me that little see it, strike it. That's kind of fun stuff. I still use that in lectures and so forth and drawing demonstrations. So it works. So let me stop there. I cannot thank you enough for your patience and being with me here today, gang. Really great to have you on board. Any closing questions here? It really did. Excellent. Did it help? Cool. I hope that's the case. When you go into lines like that, don't be afraid to just lay them down lightly first, Brad. Just delicately. Now come back in where they're closest to you. Wake them up. And then let them disappear. That tells you where that light source is coming from. Anytime you put form together, just really interesting. Look how just how you can put that together, and right away you've got shape without. It's magical, absolutely magical. So anyway, gang, thanks so much for your patience here today. A quick note for Captain Nemo, if you're still with me, and everybody else, the book is ready now. I just looked at the final proof this morning. The dynamics and drawing is all coming together. No, I'm not an awesome teacher. I've just been very fortunate to work with some great people over the years, Brett. So thank you very much for a very kind remark here. I just know that it really is a big help to me to have you guys in the audience. You've been a great inspiration to me, and I can't thank you enough. Anyhow, let's put that together here, and the publications is ready to go. We're putting it in a PDF format now, and we'll get it up on the website as soon as we can, Nemo. So I'm going to pass the word around. It's a really neat digest of 30 pages of how just basic drawing dynamics, and we'll get that to you guys as soon as possible here. So to Nemo, to Brett, and to especially to Liz, or Betts rather, man, you just made my day, Betts. I mean, you're just a great kid, and I thank you so much. I always remember I've used this line over and over again in public speaking engagements, and I thank you for it. That was then, and this is now. And believe me, it's just going to get better and better and better as we go. So my best to you and Sam. Stay tuned, and thank you so much for all that you've done for me over the years. And again, Nemo, your input's terrific. Brett, keep asking those questions. It's really helpful. It keeps me on my toes. The older I get, the tougher it is to stand up on those toes too. So it's not been easy, but it's been great fun. It's great fun to be with you. Please check my website out at drcontrast.com. There's some really interesting drawing programs there. It might be of some interest to you, Brett. Down the line, coming news, we're adding to the store. We're going to put some print work up. The book is coming. So a lot of neat things are happening at this end. And I continue to, I count it all for one simple thing, to your kindness toward me being a part of the stream. You'll never know how much it means to me. This is just really interesting. It's really great to have you on board. So hope you have a great day. Stay tuned tomorrow. Tomorrow at maybe 1:30, I'm just going to go through some just simple basic drawing exercises to go through just sketch rendering stuff. Maybe a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I haven't picked the subject matter yet, but when I do, we'll keep you posted. And I always remember to finish this stream, every stream I do, with a very simple message, and that is simply this: that always, never forget to remember to dare to be great, because you are. Thanks very much, gang. Have a great day and all the very best. And if you have any questions or concerns, please drop me a note at my email address is jim@drcontrast.com. Go get them, and all the best, and never look back. Thank you. Bye-bye now. Oh, Brett, tomorrow's time is going to start at 1:30. Thanks a lot, gang. Take care. And Betts, if you're still there, give Sam a big hug for me. Thanks so much. Take care.